Good evening. Tonight we're going to be tackling the Lighthouse frame, which is this one. It's done with crushed glass and rhinestones, and to build. The kit comes complete with everything you need from start to finish, including the tablecloth, which is a great setup. We include a lighthouse drawing, which will be your guide as far as laying out the lighthouse. You're going to position it under the frame, get it where you want it to be, line it up, and this will be your guide as far as drawing your picture, and we're going to build up from here. We're going to use the glue to draw the lighthouse, which will be your outline. I do one side at a time. You can trim your rhinestone. You kind of measure it and trim it where you need it, and then glue it down. This glue is easy to work with. It comes with a nice little tip on it. Start with one side, do the other. The only thing that we don't include in the kit is scissors. Other than the scissors, you will have everything you need. You can lay the rhinestones down, and you can kind of move it around a little bit as needed to get to where you need to be. And it gives you your outline that you're looking for. And then you just continue to work your way through. You can adjust, you can move. It does not need to be exact. What you're doing is you're building a picture, and you're building your own pictures. So if you modify it a little bit, that is absolutely fine. The rhinestones trim pretty easy with scissors. They're usually pretty quick and easy. You just snip them in between the rhinestone, and then it's like tracing a picture in kindergarten. The glue sets up pretty fast, but you can still pull it out and move it. It's not a big concern. Try not to get a lot of glue on the outside of your photo, but anything that's on the inside is going to fill in with crushed glass, so it's really not an issue. The clear. So I feel like I have extra. And what I usually do is I cut it close, and then I go back and snip some of the extra off as needed. That allows me to get close and determine exactly what I need to cut. And there we are. So your lighthouse is done. All of the outlining is done at this point. At this point, we come back and we start working with a color. There's a little squiggly line in the areas that are to be filled in with the black. And I get the black glass, I fill it in. If something strays outside, you can use the tweezers. Sometimes you might need to move glass around, like a bigger piece around or whatever that may be kind of overhanging or in the way. I'm gonna fill in all of the black sections before I go on to the white. I like to work one color at a time. Next, we're gonna work on the palm trees. I'm just going through, lining up the shells, kind of piecing them together like they're a palm tree, like they're the stem. And this, sometimes it's easier to push it around with a paintbrush. So I just build my palm tree here, and then I'm going to build my stem over here. Then we'll go on to the leaf. And sometimes it's easier to manipulate it with a paintbrush or tweezers, or it just gives you a little more control. Sometimes your fingers get a little sticky in there, and once you're happy with your tree trunks, then you can go ahead and build. I just push my stuff to the side. I don't toss it yet because you may need it when you go ahead and pour the epoxy. Sometimes you need to move things around a little bit. To create the palm tree, I kind of paint it out, and then I pour it out, and then I just use the paintbrush to kind of move it around between the paintbrush and my fingers. Sometimes I look for a little piece that might be a little pointier on the end to give me that look like the leaf is coming to a point down. Now this will look lighter when you pour the epoxy on it, so you're probably going to want to add more. So keep the green close by because it does tend to lighten up. So what I do is I usually come back after I've drizzled the epoxy on top, and I add a little more green to the very top. I do it with tweezers. I kind of move it around a little bit. You also look and make sure you don't have any strays on your frame because those will tend to stand out. Here's the lighthouse with the palm trees, the water in the background, the black and the white. You can kind of see how it all plays in. My picture got moved a little bit underneath, so that's okay. But this kind of gives you an idea what it looks like. What I'm doing now is just going through, I flipped my picture over so that I didn't have the outlines anymore. And I've just got a white background, the picture that I was using as a guide, because that allows me to kind of look and see if I'm happy with my picture. We are ready for epoxy. Now with epoxy, I would say first thing you need to do is put your gloves on. And that's, wear your gloves. Epoxy's sticky. I am terrible about not wearing gloves, and I really should. We're going to take both jars, the full jar, the full bottle, and pour it into the cup. Pour in the whole bottle. Kind of shake it to make sure you get most of it. These bottles, do not try to rinse them out and save them. Epoxy is sticky, it's messy, it's not worth saving the bottle. You are going to mix for 3 minutes. You're going to mix for 3 minutes, and then you need to let your epoxy sit for 5 minutes. So I will be back in 8 minutes. We stirred it for a solid 3 minutes and set a timer. You have to get the full 3 minutes in. Then after we stirred it for 3 minutes, I let it rest for 5. So I'm gonna drizzle the epoxy over the crushed glass, and you just slowly drizzle it so that you don't move a lot of it, and you can go back and readjust everything you need to make sure you're getting all the way in the corners of this picture frame. You are essentially going to cover the entire picture. I start with the crushed glass. I drizzle though. It is a very light drizzle is what you're doing because it keeps the glass from moving too much. Work my way around and cover the entire frame. I like to leave a little bit of epoxy left in the jar, in the cup. That way I can kind of see if I need to fill in. Then you're gonna go through and you're gonna paint the entire picture frame. And you want to make sure that you are covering the entire frame needs to be covered with epoxy. Like here I had a piece of loose black glass. You just pick it up and put it back in. It's not a big deal. And what I'm doing here is I'm just making sure it gets pushed all the way into the corners. You need to make sure you're covering the entire frame. This will give you a nice, pretty smooth glass look when you're done, but you've got to make sure you cover the entire frame. Like down here, I don't have any epoxies, so that's where it's a good thing I saved some. And that's why you have the tablecloth. Make sure you are working on the tablecloth and not, and see, that's where I'm gonna flood it to make sure that I have completely covered the entire frame. This stage, you really need to be wearing rubber gloves because it is sticky, and you might want to wear older clothes. It is sticky and messy to work with, that I try not to touch it at this point. I don't pick up my frame. I try not to pick it up, but you can come in and you can move this glass around a little bit with your paintbrush. And I'm gonna come in with a few more pieces because to me it's looking a little light, like maybe it needs a little darkness down on the leaves. So I come in, and with it coming on top, it darkens up a little bit. You do not need to pour more epoxy on that. It will kind of settle in. What I do is just kind of drag it around a little bit to get the look you want. You have a little bit of time. You obviously don't want to walk away from it for an hour, but you have a few minutes that you can kind of move things around. And I do a really good look around to make sure my colors are, my epoxy has gone into all of the corners. Right here, I'm kind of going through and making sure, make sure you coat the entire frame. Move stuff around, let it sit for a few minutes. Now after it has set for a few minutes, you want to come through and you want to lightly mist the frame. This will allow any bubbles that are in the epoxy to come to the surface. Sometimes you might see one or two. You can go in and pop them as well. And then you want to leave it alone overnight. You can pick it up and set it back in the box and leave it, or you can leave it right where you're working. When you're all done, you'll roll everything up in the tablecloth. So let's talk about cleanup with the kits. One of the things I like the most about these kits is that they are designed so that when you are done, there is no mess to clean up. I saved the glass. You can roll the glass up in the tablecloth. Save the rubbing alcohol, and I saved the glass. Everything else, you literally just roll it up, just like that, and it goes in the trash. You have no mess.